segment of the Liberty Lineup. This is The Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. This hour, we'll be speaking with William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine. What was the cover-up with the Oklahoma City bombing back in the 90s? Why was there a cover-up? Was there a Middle East connection? More with William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine. Okay, so we mentioned that we're having on William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine. You can check out his reports at thenewamerican.com, as well as a lot of other great investigative journalism there on the national issues, international issues as well. I've been following Bill Jasper's reports for the past
20 years?
I've been following it for the past 10, 15 years, and but have been going back and reading a lot of his reports on the Oklahoma City bombing. He had watched his videos that he did back in the 80s with former Congressman Larry McDonald on terrorism and what was really behind it, not exactly what you're being told in the media. And I really respect his and appreciate the research that he does. If he's going to write about it, I've found that you can pretty much take it to the bank. I mean, to make sure that the sources are there, the original investigation is there. I really respect William F. Jasper from the New American, and I appreciate you being on with us, Mr. Jasper.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the very generous, kind introduction there.
So I think some of our listeners might be wondering, and you might even be wondering, why in the heck do we want to talk about something that happened over 20 years ago?
Well, it is still relevant. I'm not sure what might have prompted it at this particular time, but it is still relevant to many things that are going on today.
So how would you kind of introduce that? Why would you say it's still relevant?
Well, because this, prior to 9/11, the Oklahoma City bombing was the largest terrorist attack ever to take place on American soil, and it still has not been solved. The one perpetrator, Timothy McVeigh, has been executed. The other co-conspirator, Terry Nichols, who the federal government concedes was not even in the vicinity, was not participating on that morning of the bombing, is in prison for 161 years. However, all of the evidence which our investigation at the New American uncovered, and that involved several years of very painstaking research. We interviewed, me personally, being the main lead investigator, interviewed numerous, hundreds of witnesses, eyewitnesses, ear witnesses, that is people who were right in the vicinity, who heard what was going on, people who were in the building who were survivors' family members, investigators, police, emergency responders. We did an extensive investigation of that, and then we hired top experts in forensics, in explosive forensics, in engineering, in physicists, in seismology. We covered a number of different fields. We had numerous photographs and audio tapes of witnesses and alleged witnesses, and so we had to track down all of these things. And then I traveled over virtually all of the areas, the roads between Oklahoma City and Kansas, and the various places where Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols and others, and the others unknown, who were various John Does that were involved. All of the evidence shows. And the key thing here is the federal government prosecutors, then under the Clinton, Janet Reno administration, and Louis III, head of the FBI, went to extreme lengths to cover up all of this evidence showing that there were multiple bombs. There was not just one truck bomb that was responsible for destroying the Murrah building in Oklahoma City and killing 168 people and wounding and injuring 700, 1,000 other people. But there were multiple bombs, not just the one truck bomb, which then necessitated multiple co-conspirators. And all the evidence shows there were multiple co-conspirators. And we can get into each of these things as time permits and as your interest requires. And so originally, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols and a mysterious John Doe number 2 had APBs put out on them, and Janet Reno said, and others unknown, and they were after immediately a group of Middle Eastern suspects, and then they dropped that. Well, we didn't drop that. We went on after that, and we checked out a number of leads, several of which turned up very important evidence. And then there was another angle to this, which was a huge mystery. Why was the federal government, which at this time, this is right, remember, in the time period when the Clinton administration is going after right-wing extremism. We had just had a couple of years before, in 1992, 3 years before, the Ruby Ridge, Randy Weaver thing. That was actually under the Bush administration, where his family was killed, his wife and son killed by federal authorities. That caused a great big outcry because it was a huge overstep and vicious murder by the federal agents there. Then that was followed up by Waco, where we had numerous people killed because of FBI ATF, to put it kindly, mishandling of that event. And this was a time when the Clinton administration was pushing for rolling up all of what they called the right-wing extremists. That is, all those who claimed that the federal government was out of control. Everybody was being now, with the Oklahoma City bombing, being smeared as being an anti-government extremist. That anyone who spoke against the federal government's overreach was somehow an ideational co-conspirator with Timothy McVeigh. That's the term that actually Time magazine used, that those people who criticized the government during this time were ideational co-conspirators. And so everybody withdrew back into their shell, not wanting to be...
that reminds me a lot of the stuff that's going on right now with the Lavoy Finicum case.
Absolutely. And so what we see today is that there are major cover-ups going on all over as the federal government, various agencies, all of these rogue elements within these rogue agencies are violating the Constitution that they've sworn to uphold. They are engaged in very serious violations of American citizen rights and of our Constitution. And in many of these cases, as we look at them across the board, if you go back, trace them back to Oklahoma City, we see some of the same epidemiology, you might say, where many of the key conspirators who should have been prime suspects and should have been arrested, indicted, and been on trial were mysteriously neglected. And we looked particularly at a number of people involved in this compound outside of Oklahoma City called Elohim City. And we did an extensive number of stories on that and went into that. This was a so-called identity movement group wherein Timothy McVeigh had visited there. He had made a phone call there just after renting the Ryder truck. He had talked with Andy the German, Andreas Strassmeyer. We've done a lot of reporting on him and actually sent a reporter over to Germany to talk to him after he fled back to Germany with the aid, apparently, of the federal government, which allowed him to go. Anyway, all of these people had a tie to the Oklahoma City bombing, but they were allowed to skate free. Why was that? Well, because all of the evidence points to the fact that, and some of them have confirmed it, that they were actually FBI assets. They were actually working with the federal government. All of these people who the evidence points to were involved in setting up the whole bombing. And we can talk about those things. We had at one time the sole interview with Carol Howe, the undercover operative for the ATF, who had penetrated Elohim City, and Dennis Mahon and Robert Millar and all of those people who were involved there in that identity movement. Andrea Strassmeyer, the German, she was in there with in the midst of them, and we did a cover story on her, and everybody, all the rest of the media, were trying to get a hold of her. Finally, she went on with Diane Sawyer and with ABC, NBC, CBS. But they all tried to discredit her. So anyway, we can talk about any of those things that might interest you, or any angle that you want to go on. It's a huge story, which
tons of different ways we could go.
Unfortunately do not have all of our Oklahoma City stories online right now. We're working on that. We've been hacked a number of times. Our website has been, and we've had to repost many hundreds of stories that have been knocked down, and so we're still working on that.
So you guys did the real investigation that the prosecutors should have done, first of all.
Well, yes, and the thing is, we tried to actually do an even more important part of the investigation in stopping the federal government from destroying the Murrah building right 1 month after the bombing. That was an important crime scene and should have been preserved for some time, because there were a lot of unanswered questions, and particularly one of the experts whom I consulted first, whom I already knew, was General Benton K. Parton, one of the foremost explosives experts in the world, explosives and bomb damage assessment. He had been in charge of the Air Force Armaments Technology Laboratory. It was his job there and at other facilities in the military to test various explosives against various materials, against earthenworks, against concrete, against steel-reinforced concrete, against multiple-story buildings. They would actually, at their laboratory there, build whole big buildings, and then have bombs hit close to them, have bombs hit right on them, and see then assess the damage. So anyway, he's the expert's expert on explosives. And the same day of the bombing of the Murrah building, I called him, and he said, "Well, I'm just, all I know is what I see on TV right now, but I can tell you they're saying that this was caused by a truck bomb parked outside of the building." Because I could tell you that is not the case. That didn't happen. You don't have those massive concrete, steel-reinforced columns of a major building like that taken out by air blast. You have to actually get the truck underneath the building, or he said, when you look at it, it looks from my initial things that there had to have been explosive charges placed on the columns.
So the experts are telling us that the official government story is impossible.
And there's actual evidence. So this is not like a lot of conspiracy theories on a lot of different subjects, whether they're true or not true or whatever. This is a full investigation that has been thorough, evidence preserved and available, and we know what happened. And in much of this.
Well, one of the things with regard to the building itself was I was able to contact and then interview and have access to the official photographer, one of the official photographers who was first on the scene after the explosion. And he went through the building and photographed. It took literally several thousand photographs, which have been very important in piecing this together, because the building was actually destroyed before actual chemical tests and other examinations.
So, like with other big cover-ups, the government has had to officially hide and cover up information on this, and they've worked together. We're heading off to a break. Hopefully, you can hang on with us.
Sure.
Okay, we're on with William F. Jasper from the New American Magazine, thenewamerican.com. This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore of defendingutah.org. This is the Liberty Lineup radio show on AM 630, k-talk.com. If you've got a question for William, this is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore from defendingutah.org, and we are back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com. This is the Liberty Lineup, the Naked Truth segment where we think right and wrong, not right and left. And we are speaking with William F. Jasper from The New American Magazine. You can check them out at thenewamerican.com. And we've been talking about the Oklahoma City bombing and how it was basically a government cover-up from the very beginning of the investigation. There are a lot of different aspects of that, and it's like there's so many different rabbit holes that it's kind of hard to stay focused on where we want to go, and I don't even know, there's so many different aspects of it. There was something that Enoch wanted to ask you about, Mr. Jasper.
Yeah, so William, here's the question, the big question. If all this evidence is now available, has there ever been a grand jury who's attempted to use it to indict someone, or do you see any possible path that someone could use the evidence and start to maybe bring real justice to this, or that's never going to happen as long as we still have an administration that continues to be complicit in these problems? What do you think about all that?
Oops, hold on. Oh, sorry, we got the
Charles.
Go ahead, start that over again. We didn't have you on. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's a very good question, Enoch. The state grand jury or county grand jury are venues that can be used to do that, to bring those things about. And that is what Representative Charles Key, one of the very heroic persons in all of this, tried to do. He tried several different ways to get separate investigations. He was a member of the state legislature in Oklahoma for many years. He and several other local officials and survivors tried to do that. However, at every step of the way, the governor, the state attorney general, the local prosecutors, and the media all united to say, no, all of that would just gum up the works. We have to wait until the federal trial is over. We don't want to have the federal trial or the state trials jeopardized as a result of this. And so for a long time we were told, look, the federal government is doing this exhaustive job. They would keep citing these statistics about how many millions of documents they had gone over, how many millions of pieces of evidence, et cetera, how many photographs, et cetera, that they had. And this is typical in many of these federal cases that turn out to be cover-ups. They simply swamp you with volume, and that is supposed to be, this huge dump of materials, and that is supposed to impress everyone that this is an exhaustive investigation. And that's what Attorney General Janet Reno said, that no stone would be left unturned. Well, there were lots of stones with creepy crawlies under them that they refused to turn over, and that's what we kept turning up. And so the effort at the state and the county level was repeatedly foiled, and the effort to stop the destruction of the Murrah building, the effort to many efforts like that went on to preserve evidence were destroyed. We kept trying to get release of the videotapes. There were numerous videotapes in the surrounding area around the Murrah building and on public and private buildings around it, which showed the arrival of the Ryder truck and showed that there was a passenger in there with Timothy McVeigh, and showed that there was a vehicle following him with two or more individuals inside. All of those videos were suppressed. We still have not seen them. They have not been released. There are many documents that have not been released, and particularly with regard to those areas that we had been investigating very strongly, which dealt with a number of individuals of Middle Eastern, appeared to be Iraqi and Palestinian extraction, who were living in Oklahoma City and in Las Vegas, as well as the people I've already mentioned from Elohim City, the German foreign national who was brought in here. He was a German special forces guy who was training the people at Elohim City. They had already had a plan several years before to blow up a building, that same Murrah building. And this April 19th, 1995, took place, the Oklahoma City bombing took place on the same day that their hero was being executed in Oklahoma. So it was more than curious that the federal government refused to even look in that direction when all of the evidence pointed to them with the motive, the opportunity, and the means for carrying out this crime. And when it fit with all of the evidence, as we said, they had their own informant inside of Elohim City.
Right.
Timothy McVeigh had been there. Dennis Mahon, head of the Ku Klux Klan and the White Aryan Resistance, was living there. And he and his brother had been involved in making ANFO bombs. And in fact, Dennis Mahon, who had made death threats against me, which the FBI investigated, was himself and his brother arrested and imprisoned years later in 2012 for a bombing in Arizona where they bombed a federal judge. And finally they were taken out. But Dennis Mahon told me that he had protection. I asked one time, why have you not been arrested and imprisoned? Because he had already done many things that many other people had been in prison for. And he said, I got special protection. He says, I have a relationship with the FBI. And so
he can get away with what he wants to do. So,
yeah.
Mr. Jasper, just again for our listeners, from the New American Magazine, talking about the Oklahoma City bombing and how that relates to things going on, government cover-ups and whatnot. And this is beyond. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. We've got some callers, if that's okay, Mr. Jasper, that have some questions for you.
Sure.
John, you're on with Ben McClintock and William F. Jasper from the New American.
Thanks, guys. I'm one to believe that 9/11 was an inside job, and the point of it was to start the global war on terror, to keep us all afraid, to take away a lot of our liberties and our freedoms, and then also to, funnel a lot of money to big military industrial complex contractors, and that's pretty evident by everything I've ever seen. But with this, what is the end game in your mind as to why, this group of dudes blew up the building? I mean, and if the government covered it up, clearly, I in my mind, that would tell me that the government had some kind of ulterior motives with it.
Thank you, John.
Well, yes, that is the big question, and we were very careful, both because of wanting to stick to the facts and let the facts speak for themselves, as well as being mindful of the fact that in that atmosphere right after the Oklahoma City bombing, even for a couple of years after that, the Clinton administration said, in fact, Bill Clinton himself, if you may recall the book that that Ambrose Evans Pritchard, he was the Washington editor for the Daily Telegraph of London, and Ambrose Evans Pritchard wrote a book on Bill Clinton, and dealing with a lot of different things. But the first chapter opens with the Oklahoma City bombing, and he Ambrose Evans Pritchard, was on Air Force One with Bill Clinton and the press corps. Bill Clinton was talking to all of the journalists there, and he says, and I'm paraphrasing him because I don't have it right here in front of me, he says, Oklahoma City changed everything. We were on the defensive, and the Republicans had taken control of Congress, and they were going to dismantle all of our programs and everything. And Oklahoma City changed that all. All of a sudden, all these extremists were now on the defensive, etc. Well, that did. Everybody was in a state of shock after Oklahoma City, and everyone was afraid to criticize the Clinton administration because you would immediately be branded as being a sympathizer, co-conspirator with Timothy McVeigh and those who had caused all of this damage. And so we saw members of Congress, Republicans, who had vowed that they were going to take on the Clinton administration, all tuck tail and run and hide. And the same with most of the conservative alternative media. I won't name names, but I talked with many of the other conservative media people at the time, and I said, hey, why don't you come in on this? They said, we're reading your stuff. It's really great. We like what you're doing. Keep on it. But
but they didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It really caused a chilling effect, is what you're saying, on silencing people and then in continuing the growth of government, preventing any shrinkage of government, and there's a lot of different possibilities that they could have used, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right, and so we, in that environment, we were already taking rather daring steps, and we knew that, okay, we can't jump ahead of the evidence and come to conclusions. So we really understated all of our findings. We were very careful to do that, and I mean, we. So
as fantastic as they seem, you're saying that you actually are understating them to make sure that you weren't being accused of.
Absolutely. In fact, and not only that. I mean, in the media business, you want to be there the firstest with the mostest, the fastest, and so. We held off on a lot of things. And in fact, there's things we still haven't published because of witnesses who never gave us permission. They'd say, "Well, I'll talk to you and I'll give you this, but don't use my name and promise me." And so we're always good on our promises on that. We won't use their name, or we won't use the evidence until they give us a release on it, because sometimes that evidence will help us lead us to someone else who will allow us to use it. So anyway, to answer the caller's question that now more directly, with that as background, I would say this, that we never claimed that the Clinton administration was behind it or ran it or was in charge of the bombing. We showed with evidence in spades that they covered it up. Now, why would they cover it up? Unless it was to protect themselves, particularly the extent to which they went, the incredible lengths. And I mean, very incredible. If you
can't prove the involvement, you can prove the cover-up. We've got another caller we want to get to before we get to the break. We've got just a minute. Steve in Ogden, you're on with William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine.
Sorry, my wife works for the federal government, so the day that happened, I was bouncing between all three of the news stations. It'd been a little while. It kind of calmed down, and the reporter reporter was talking to, who I assume was a battalion chief. He had the big helmet on. He was the guy answering the questions, asking him what he knew, and he had told her, okay, we got the two bombs that brought down, or we have bombs that brought down the front of it, and we have found a bomb that was drilled into the third column. And while he's talking to her and she's trying to get information, he presses on his helmet, and he's like, I've got to go. We've just found another bomb drilled into the fourth column. Now, I have never seen this clip again. It was live on TV that day. It was a blonde female reporter talking to him. But if they drilled into the building, that's the entire story's blown right then and there. And it came right out of the spokesman for the fire department.
Yes. Well, actually, I believe, and I was going to try to go online and see if any of those were still on YouTube. So any of your listeners may want to go on and look for that, because there was a video put together which took about 15 different news station video segments and placed them together, where various first responders are coming out with, and in fact, in some of the video, you actually see them carrying or rolling out other explosives.
Right.
And then you'll see them, the camera crews running, because they're saying there's people coming there and saying, no, move. We have another bomb. And so they're...
We're heading off to a break. I don't mean to cut you off, but we want to talk about this when we get back. There's been, you talked about your investigation, the legislators' investigation, the key investigation, and the federal investigation. When we get back from the break, we're going to ask you, what are some of the main differences between the two? This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore of DefendingUtah.org. This is the Thursday segment of the Liberty Lineup, The Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left.
Sit down when all should be standing, and why do we? Transmission through the NSA, suspending your rights for the duration of the permanent war.
This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore from DefendingUtah.org.
The NSA is listening.
Hopefully, maybe they'll learn something and change their ways. This is K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com, with the Liberty Lineup radio show. This is The Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. And we have we ask you to join our grassroots network to get our updates and alerts. Just go to libertylineup.com. That's libertylineup.com. We have on the air with us today, on the line with us, we have William F. Jasper from the New American Magazine. You can check them out at thenewamerican.com. And he's been one of the lead investigators into the Oklahoma City bombing, understanding the Oklahoma City bombing and the cover-up with that, comparing the evidence to what actually the government said and came out with is really important for us to understand how they operate in general, so we can see the modus operandi and what they're doing to this day. And before we went to the break, we had a caller ask about, there was a news report that they viewed at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing, and where firefighters were talking about how they had found explosives drilled into the columns of the building, where the official investigation says that it was just the Ryder truck, the rented truck. And so, Bill Jasper, have you ever come across any evidence to back that up? Have you seen those videos? Do you know anything else to kind of go along with that? Oops, hold on, sorry. We got you turned on. Here we go. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I was glad that your caller brought that up, because, as I mentioned, there were several videos put out where people had assembled various news footage from the various networks, local and national, that were there. And in several of these cases, you see people all of a sudden they're running. They're being told, "Hey, move back! We found more bombs." And the one that he refers to with it was either the fire captain or the police bomb squad person who said they had one that was taken from a column. That is, I believe that video, or one of those assembled videos, is still out there on the internet. We were unable to actually promote and distribute that because we didn't have copyright on it and couldn't get copyright from the various news organizations. So it was just kind of pirated and put out there by a number of different people. And so if you look at that, you have that on the scene news coverage of it. This all goes to the whole issue of multiple bombs, and so there is that evidence, the video evidence of finding other bombs. There is the forensic evidence, which I referred to before, by General Parton, who did a very thorough examination of the whole thing and pointed out why they couldn't have been just the Anfo truck bomb. And in his analysis, he did several, one of which was a 23-page, and another one which was a 56-page one with other top bombing analysts. We have people like Dr. Roger Rawback and engineers like Robert Frias and Sam Cohen, the father of the neutron bomb, a world-famous physicist. So these are not just armchair cranks here. So you have the forensic evidence, the video evidence, and very important, which we haven't mentioned, the seismic evidence. And the New American did the most extensive investigation of the seismic evidence. There were 2 seismographs in the vicinity. There was one at the Omniplex Museum in 4 miles from the Oklahoma City Murrah building, and to the north. And then there was the seismograph at the University of Oklahoma, 16 miles to the south. And both of those recorded the tremors from the blast. And both of them showed that there was not one event, but multiple events. So
about how many events were there?
Well, we don't know because several of them were very close together.
Gotcha.
So and they were small. The truck bomb was very large, and so it made a much larger blast. The smaller ones that were on columns did not have as much blast, and they were nanoseconds or a second apart. And so when that wave is propagated through the Earth like that, but for 4 miles, 16 miles, it gives various signatures. And so we had a number of different experts look at that. The foremost one being Dr. Raymond Brown, who's a geophysicist for the Oklahoma Geophysical Society and Geophysical Survey, and a professor at University of Oklahoma in Norman. I went down there, and it was amazing. Dr. Brown said, well, yeah, this is important information, and you're the only reporter, none from Oklahoma City,
Wow.
none from L.A., none of the New York reporters, none of the big networks came down here to look at this.
So with that, I don't mean to cut you off on that, but we got some callers, and I wanted to get to kind of a key point, because there's so many different things. People can look at the New American and do a search for Oklahoma City bombing, look at all the things that you guys have talked about, but I want to kind of get out some key points for people to kind of latch on to. There was the investigation by Representative Charles Key. There was your investigation, and then there was the federal investigation. Can you share with us maybe some 3 or 4 just kind of bullet points of major discrepancies between the 3 investigations?
Well, yes. First of all, my investigation and Representative Charles Key's investigation were very close. In fact, we worked together on many things. We had a very good relationship. We helped him. He helped us. And so I didn't find any, no real discrepancies between our investigations. The big discrepancy was between our investigations and the federal investigation or cover-up. And we've already touched on
So the New Americans investigation, just for everybody, just to kind of recap, the New Americans investigation and the investigation led by
Representative
Charles Key were right there together. The major thing was the federal government's cover-up.
Right, and that there's several key points in that. One is the multiple bombs. 2 is multiple perpetrators. 3 is prior knowledge. We haven't even gotten into that. The evidence is that
the feds knew about it in advance. You're saying
knew that this was coming, and how did they know this? Well, there are several different possible explanations for that. But then also there is the whole issue of multiple witnesses. Now, they called many witnesses in the trial. However, there were many witnesses that they didn't call, and these are some of the best witnesses. And why didn't they call? Because these witnesses would have interjected into the script something they didn't want, which was multiple bombs, prior knowledge, or multiple perpetrators. And that would have opened up the investigation, and many of these lines of investigation would have led back to FBI, ATF, and other federal agencies that were at best negligent, at worst had elements that were actually helping to carry down.
Okay, appreciate that. We've got Carl. You're on with William F. Jasper from the New American Magazine.
Yeah, Mr. Jasper, would you agree that McVeigh, Nichols, and Michael Fortier were guilty as charged, or are you saying they were patsies?
Well, no, I think from the available evidence, there are still some mysteries about McVeigh's involvement. There are some people who claim that he is a patsy, that he was misled by federal authorities who had him doing undercover work, and that he did not know that the bomb was actually going to go off. He was under the impression that he was part of a sting operation to catch all the other bad guys. Now, we looked at that theory and checked out a number of the different, a whole bunch of evidence and witnesses that were brought forward to do that. And to me, without going into all the details, it didn't work. I believe that McVeigh was guilty, that he was involved in it knowingly, that he did intend for the building to be blown up, but that he was one of many, actually over a dozen people that we were able to pull together on this. For one thing, he did not have the explosive experience. As I mentioned, we consulted a lot of the top experts in the world on this, and he did not have there's no evidence that he had ever detonated another bomb prior to that he had ever built another one. So how was this carried out? Well, we know that there were several other people with him on that morning when he delivered the truck bomb there, and that was just the truck bomb. He certainly didn't have the experience to put the demolition charges on columns inside of the building, and that would have required someone else. So I don't believe he was just a patsy. I believe that he and Fortier and Nichols were guilty, are guilty, and but the big question is then why are all the others left off? And keep in mind, Fortier and Nichols were not, and the federal government does not claim that they were, actually in Oklahoma City at the time of the bombing, so they could not have been amongst those who were seen by multiple witnesses on the way to Oklahoma City, in the caravan that went down there, and when it arrived in Oklahoma City.
Gotcha. So with that, we had another caller off the air tell us that a deputy sheriff was warned that there were multiple bombs, and then that led to...
He was doing the warning.
He was doing the warning.
Yeah, so he was a witness, apparently, to multiple bombs, and he was warning people, and that was even on video, that part of him warning. But then afterwards, this deputy sheriff ended up dead. Did you know? Do you know about that story?
It might be referring to Sergeant Terry Yakey. Sergeant Yakey. This is a very important story. Sergeant Yakey is seen in a number of the videos going in and out of the building as it's collapsing, carrying people out. He's a great big man, a black man, about 6'4", 6'5".
It's got about 15, 20 seconds. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, he said yes, he saw a bomb squad there ahead of time. Anyway, I interviewed his mother. I was supposed to interview him before I could get down to interview him. He ended up suicided. He had supposedly slit his own throat, burnt himself with cigarettes, and then shot himself. Anyway, he had multiple, all the evidence of a torture murder, and it was ruled as a suicide. I interviewed his widow, his mother, his brother, and other people there. They were certain that this was a murder, that this was not a suicide. And
I hope people will go to thenewamerican.com, check out your articles about it. There's one called Proofs of a Bomb and Cover-Up. There is the Oklahoma City bombing tapes were tampered with, proof of bombs and cover-up. And the cover-up is going from top to bottom, from the federal government, like you said, all the way down to the governor and the state's attorney general, not allowing the investigations to go forward. Just with 10 seconds, what would you like to tell people as you part with us today?
Well, I would encourage folks to go to thenewamerican.com. That's thenewamerican.com, not only with regard to this, but so many other things that are happening right now with the TPP, with gun control, with the federal government's overreach on property, on so many different things. If we want to make sure that freedom does not perish, we've all got to become active in defending it.
Great. Thank you so much. William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine. Special thanks to our show sponsor, Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com. Stay tuned to the Liberty Lineup every Monday through Friday right here on K-Talk, 10 to noon. We'll see you next week on The Naked Truth.